Welcome to the Potato Podcast. We keep it chill, raw, and a little fried. Just like a good potato. Sometimes deep, sometimes totally random. No filters, no fake vibes. Just real talk, weird thoughts, and good energy. Let's get into it.
You see them everywhere now, don't you?
Yeah.
Filling up your social media feeds, maybe popping up in the news, these big reveals.
Oh, yeah. Smoke cannons, confetti, cakes with that secret color inside.
Exactly.
Mm.
And on the surface, gender reveal parties seem pretty simple, right? Just a fun way to share if you're having a boy or a girl.
But, like, when you dig a little deeper, and the sources you shared really show this, they've kind of ballooned into this massive, sometimes really baffling, and often pretty controversial thing.
Absolutely. What started out as, well, a pretty simple idea has become this huge cultural touchstone. It sparks joy, sure, but also concern and, honestly, a really interesting debate about what we're actually celebrating.
Totally.
So for this deep dive, our mission is really to use your sources to unpack what these gender reveal parties are all about. Like, where did this even come from?
Yeah, where did it start?
And why did it take off so fast, become so popular, and then, for a lot of people, so problematic?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe most importantly, what do these parties really reveal about our culture today? Our ideas about gender, parenting, identity?
Well, we're going to try and trace that history, look at why people love them, the appeal, but also look at the unexpected dangers that popped up.
Right.
And definitely dig into those deeper social conversations these modern rituals have really kicked off. It's definitely more complex than just a burst of pink or blue smoke.
Okay, so let's rewind that, because the sources make it really clear this isn't some, ancient tradition passed down through generations. It's actually pretty new.
Oh, very new. The widely accepted origin story, at least according to the material we looked at, points to 2008.
2008, that's it.
That seems to be it. A woman named Gemma Carvanides shared photos on her blog. She cut into a cake to reveal she was having a girl. The cake had pink frosting inside. Simple as that.
A cake on a blog. That sounds incredibly, almost quaintly low-key compared to some of the stuff you see now.
Right. It really does. But that simple act, shared online, that seems to have been the spark. And the sources really emphasize how the timing was just, well, perfect for the explosion of social media. You had platforms like Instagram, Facebook, later TikTok. They just acted as these massive accelerants.
Ah, okay. So they took that private moment, that personal celebration, and just amplified it into a public performance.
That's a great way to put it. A public performance.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the idea itself. It was the platform letting it spread and honestly escalate. It went from, finding out the sex maybe at your doctor's appointment.
Right, maybe telling close family.
To creating this whole themed event built around announcing it.
Wow.
And it transformed really quickly. Suddenly, it wasn't just immediate family. It was friends, wider circles, elaborate decorations, and these increasingly dramatic reveal moments.
Like what kind of moments?
Well, popping giant balloons filled with confetti, smoke bombs, those confetti cannons, elaborate cake-cutting ceremonies, even things like aerial displays with colored smoke from airplanes. The scale just kept growing.
And it feels like that visual element, the social media sharing, was driving that growth.
That seems to be a huge factor, yeah. Making it visually impressive became part of the point for many.
Okay, but before we get into maybe where it went off the rails for some people, let's pause on why it became so popular in the first place.
Yeah.
What's the core appeal? Why do people love doing this, according to the sources?
Well, the sources definitely highlight the positive side. And at its heart, for a lot of people, it's just a moment of pure joy,
Yeah.
It lets family and friends get together, share in that excitement of welcoming a new life, and kind of bond over that universal feeling of anticipation.
It taps into that shared human thing, right?
Yeah.
Waiting for something wonderful.
Exactly. And the sources point out it can be genuinely fun, creative, and really emotionally significant for the people involved. For many, it's less about the specific color, pink or blue, or the gender assignment itself, and more about just having a reason to celebrate together, marking a family milestone, creating those memories you capture on video and look back on.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want a good reason to celebrate with people they care about, especially something as huge as a baby on the way?
Right.
But, and here's the turn, as that scale grew, it seems the risks really grew alongside it. The sources start painting a pretty concerning picture here.
They really do. What started with, like you said, a simple cake, it escalated sometimes to extreme and, frankly, often dangerous stunts.
Stunts, like what?
The sources talk about instances involving fireworks, actual explosives.
Explosives.
Mm.
For a party.
Yeah. Even weird things like wild animals being involved somehow, car burnouts leaving colored smoke, really unpredictable pyrotechnics.
Wow. That feels like a massive leap from colored frosting to, dynamite.
It absolutely is. And the consequences, sadly, have been severe in some cases. We see reports in the sources of serious injuries, devastating property damage like wildfires, and tragically, even deaths linked directly to these attempts to create an ever bigger, more spectacular reveal.
And the sources mentioned a specific example, didn't they?
Yeah.
That wildfire.
Yes, they specifically cite that horrifying 2020 California wildfire. It was sparked by a gender reveal smoke device. It burned over 20,000 acres.
20,000 acres.
Yeah.
From a party prop. That one example is just, it's staggering. And makes you wonder, the sources seem to imply there's a connection between that pressure to create something viral, something share-worthy online, and this really dangerous escalation. Is that what you're seeing in the material?
The sources definitely draw that line. That incentive of social media virality, it pushes people to go big, right? To outdo the last reveal they saw. And that drive for spectacle seems to have directly led, in some cases, to taking increasingly dangerous risks with things like explosives, tannerite, faulty pyrotechnics.
It's sort of a dark side of turning these private family moments into public entertainment.
A very dark side. But the sources also go deeper, don't they? Beyond just the safety concerns, which are serious enough.
Yeah.
They really dig into a more fundamental critique about the concept itself, the gender part of gender reveal party. And this is where the conversation gets really complex.
Okay, let's unpack that. What's the main critique?
Well, one of the most significant critiques highlighted in the sources is that these parties, fundamentally, can reinforce kind of outdated, very binary notions of gender.
Binary meaning. Just boy or girl.
Exactly. They tend to boil everything down to that pink or blue dichotomy. It simplifies gender into just two rigid categories, boy or girl, often tied implicitly to certain cultural expectations of what's masculine or feminine.
So using a color to immediately sort of assign someone to a very specific cultural box before they're even here.
That's the argument. And as our general understanding of gender has evolved, recognizing it exists more on a spectrum, that gender identity isn't always the same as the sex assigned at birth, acknowledging non-binary and transgender identities. The idea of assigning and celebrating a child's presumed gender based on an ultrasound before they even have a chance to understand or express it themselves, it starts to feel, for some people, increasingly limiting, maybe even potentially harmful.
So the argument, based on the sources, is that these parties aren't actually revealing gender at all.
Correct. That's a key point of the critique. What's actually being revealed is the sex assigned at birth, based on observing anatomy during an ultrasound. Gender, according to this perspective in the sources, is something much more complex. It's something a person discovers, defines, expresses for themselves over their lifetime.
And it might align with the sex assigned at birth, or it might not.
Precisely. So celebrating based only on that early physical marker, the argument goes, might inadvertently place expectations or limitations on the child that just don't fit who they grow up to be.
That's a pretty profound point. And it's interesting because the sources even mention Jenna Carvanides again.
Yeah.
Right? The woman who started it all with the cake. She's expressed some regret.
Yes, that's a really key detail. It comes up in the sources. Even the originator of the trend has spoken out later. She's highlighted the dangers of what's called gender essentialism, that idea that your gender is fixed and determined solely by biology. And she emphasized how important it is to allow children the freedom to explore their identities without being put into these predetermined boxes from day one or even before day one.
Wow. That shift in perspective from the founder herself is quite telling, isn't it? About how the understanding of this trend, and maybe gender itself, has evolved.
It really underscores that this isn't just about cake and balloons. It's tangled up in these much bigger cultural conversations we're having.
Definitely. But of course, it's not a one-sided issue. The sources also present the counter-arguments, the defenses. Not everyone sees these parties through that critical lens.
Absolutely not. There's a strong perspective presented in the material that, look, these parties are basically just harmless fun.
Just lighten up. It's a party.
Pretty much. It's a way to celebrate a pregnancy with loved ones. It's become a modern milestone. And the intention behind it isn't necessarily to reinforce rigid gender roles for the child.
It's seen more as celebrating the new life itself, the event, not strictly the gender label.
Exactly. And the sources do acknowledge the deep emotional significance these events can hold for some families. Particularly, for those who might have faced fertility challenges or pregnancy loss.
Oh.
For them, any opportunity to celebrate the anticipation of a new life is incredibly meaningful. And they would argue, the love and the intention behind the party are what truly matter, far more than the color of the confetti.
That adds a really crucial layer of understanding. It's clearly not just one single narrative or feeling about these things.
Not at all.
And it seems the trend itself might be starting to reflect some of these complex feelings, these critiques, and changing perspectives. The sources talk about adaptation, evolution.
Yes, we are definitely seeing that evolution happening. The sources point to the emergence of more inclusive, sometimes more nuanced, and sometimes just quite humorous approaches to the whole concept.
How are people adapting it? What are some examples from the sources?
Well, you see couples who choose to reveal the sex assigned at birth, but they explicitly add messages right there at the party or in the announcement about respecting their child's future autonomy to define their own gender.
Okay, so acknowledging the difference.
Right. Some are opting for, party with no reveal concepts. They celebrate the baby's impending arrival, maybe reveal the name, but without specifying or highlighting sex or gender at all.
Interesting.
Others are using the whole event format to announce completely different news, maybe an adoption finalization or that they're having twins. And some parents are even using the gathering as an opportunity to come out as non-binary themselves.
Whoa, okay. That's fascinating. So the party template kind of remains, but the actual content of what's being revealed is shifting dramatically.
Exactly. It's becoming less about just assigning that binary label to the baby and maybe more about the parents using the event to express their values, their identity, maybe their creativity or sense of humor.
The focus is broadening out.
It seems to be, in some cases. And, we can't fully understand the whole journey of this trend without circling back again, forcefully, to the internet culture that really fueled so much of its growth and escalation.
Right, that whole transforming personal joys into public spectacles thing we talked about.
That drive to create something unique, something visually stunning, something share-worthy. It's a really powerful engine online.
Yeah.
But, as the sources also note, that constant visibility and the pressure maybe to go viral or just one-up your friends or what you saw last week, that can breed comparison, anxiety, even competition among people planning these events.
Makes sense. And the sources bring up one more practical concern tied into this push for spectacle, right? The environmental impact.
Yes, that's another layer. Many of these elaborate reveals, especially the ones aiming for big visual impact, generate a huge amount of waste.
Like what?
Think about it. Disposable plastic decorations, tons of balloons that can travel for miles and harm wildlife, smoke chemicals released into the air, glitter everywhere.
Right, glitter. The craft herpes.
Exactly. So from an environmental perspective, that adds another significant layer of concern and critique to the whole practice, especially the really over-the-top versions.
Okay, so pulling all this together, then we've gone from a simple cake to potentially wildfires, from pure joy to really deep social critique, from a strict binary to more fluid expressions. Where do the sources leave us on the future of gender reveal parties? What's next?
Well, the sources really just pose the question, will they fade away as awareness grows? Will they continue to adapt and morph into something almost unrecognizable from that original 2008 cake? Or maybe they'll be replaced by broader celebrations of parenthood or welcoming a new family member that aren't tied to gender at all.
It's hard to say.
It is. Ultimately, the sources seem to suggest that, like any tradition, really, gender reveal parties reflect the culture and the values of the moment. They can embody pure joy and connection, sure, but they can also highlight societal tensions, performative pressures, or limiting views.
So it sounds like the intention behind the party, why someone is actually doing it, becomes the really critical piece.
That's definitely what the sources emphasize. They sort of encourage us and you, listening, to consider, why are we celebrating this way? Who are we including in this celebration? And ultimately, what are we really revealing with this event? It might not just be about the baby's assigned sex.
And maybe, just maybe, the most truly meaningful parties aren't the ones focused on revealing a baby's presumed gender at all, but instead, what?
Perhaps they reveal something deeper about the people throwing the party. Their hopes for the future, their creativity, the strength of their community, the friends and family gathered around.
Yeah.
And maybe most importantly, their open willingness to embrace whoever that child grows up to be. Celebrating the potential rather than locking them into a pre-assigned box from the get-go.
That's a really powerful, thought-provoking way to frame it, and one that definitely sticks with you long after the smoke clears, so to speak.
It certainly adds a layer of meaning that goes far beyond just pink or blue, doesn't it?
It really does. Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive. It's clear this whole phenomenon is way more complex than it first appears. Thank you for guiding us through the history, the joy, the definite dangers, and those surprisingly deep social conversations surrounding gender reveal parties, all drawn from the sources you brought.
Oh, my pleasure. It's actually a great example of how looking closely at something seemingly lighthearted, like a party trend, can reveal so much about the world we're living in, the pressures we feel, and the values we hold. Or maybe the values we're starting to question.
Exactly. Well said. Thanks again, and thanks to all of you for joining us for this deep dive.